Hey guys, welcome back to DASKA Discusses. Today I'm going to give you guys a special treat. I'm going to rank the 3 Back to the Future films in my least favourite to favourite. So let's do this.
Marty, you gotta come back with me. Where? Back to the future.
Now, here we go. It's pretty hard thing to do, to rank 3 of my favourite films of all time in my top 100 for sure. One day I'll do a top 100 video of my favourite films. It's going to take a lot of videos, so... But let's do this. Let's go through it. All 3 films have got some great scenes to them. They're nostalgic beyond the point of anything, really. I mean, if you grew up in that era, the 80s, 90s, you'll understand how important these films were to growing up. So let's just look at what I think, the weakest of the 3. We'll start off straight away. Bang. Straight off the bat. Back to the Future Part 3. Yeah, I'm going to put it there. Now look, the thing is about Back to the Future Part 3, yes, we get the opening sequence is really good, how you've got Marty and Doc. Oh, by the way, spoilers for all these, so yeah, just so you know. You've got Marty and Doc, and then, Marty gets the letter at the end of Part 2 saying that Doc has been, transported, or he's in 1885, and he has to basically get old Doc from, future Doc from 1955 to help him find the time machine that Doc Brown buried into the cave, I think it was, as well. So you've got all that kind of opening there, how they're going to get it to work, etc., which is really interesting, and putting it, fixing it all up. Now you've got Marty who goes back into 1885, and again, I didn't mind the film itself, but I just think that throughout the whole film, it's just trying to get from point A to point B. They're trying to figure out a way of getting this time machine to work. Now in there you've got, Doc Brown finds a love interest with Clara Clayton. Now, I think that's a weaker point of the film. In the last 2 films, there hasn't been much romance apart from, Marty and his girlfriend. But with this, they kind of push that, I think, a bit too much in the film, which kind of slows it down a bit. The whole Western kind of theme is pretty cool. Biff Tannen's, old relative, Mad Dog Tannen, and there's some really funny scenes in that as well, that he plays in there. But going from that, and then the whole Clint Eastwood thing when he tries to pretend he's Clint Eastwood, even as a kid I felt that a bit too, I don't know, it was like a bit cheap for me, sorry. But I just felt that Part 3, even though, at the end when they finally push the DeLorean to the 88 miles per hour and he goes back to 1985, and then all of a sudden Doc shows up with his train and he's got his sons, I get that, and it was an interesting way of ending the saga. Very strange scene if you haven't seen it, look it up on YouTube, about that last bit when Doc Brown's talking to Marty. One of the kids behind him is doing something really strange. If you want to look that up, it's a bit weird. But yeah, as far as all that goes, look, Part 3, not saying it was a bad film, I just felt that the romance kind of slowed it down, and the banter between Doc Brown and Marty was there, but not as much as it is in the other films. So all in all, it was my least favourite of the 3. And I'm probably, if I had to give it a rating, it'd probably be a 7 out of 10 for me for Back to the Future 3. And it sits at my least favourite, so it's number 3 at number 3. Now we're entering into some controversial waters here. I'm going to put my number 2, or my second favourite film out of the Back to the Future trilogy, Back to the Future Part 1, the original. Yep, I'm putting it there. Why? Well, look, let's look at a few things. 1, yes, it is a classic. Yes, we were introduced to Doc Brown, Einstein the dog, and Marty and his family, etc. And we find out, that, Doc Brown's made a time machine. This is DeLorean. I remember when I was a kid, I'm like, I really want a DeLorean when I get older. Yeah, that didn't happen. But then you've got how he travels back, and you've got the Libyans who wanted, I think Doc Brown was selling fake nuclear weapons to him, and he gets shot, and then Marty gets sent back into 1955, where I think the setting and the use of mise-en-scène, which means, that what's put in the frame, actually works really well, and you feel like you're in the 50s, which, again, this whole nostalgic feeling for people that watch this in the 80s who grew up in the 50s would be like, wow, this is amazing. But also, for me, it's like, oh, cool, I like all this 50s stuff, it's pretty cool. Then you've got the story of, Marty kind of like, you find out at the beginning of the film, you find out how his parents met, and then again with, what did Doc call it? The space-time continuum, how Marty gets involved in that, and Marty's mum ends up like having a crush on him in 1955, which again, a bit weird, but hey, back then when you watched it, you're like, oh yeah, no big deal. You watch it now and you might think it's a bit strange, but whatever, right? And from that, Marty's got to think of a way to get his dad George to like meet with his mum so they can get together, otherwise he won't actually exist. And there's a really cool sequence, obviously the Johnny B. Good guitar sequence where, he's got the guitar before that, and he's disappearing from the photo because of the space-time continuum. I get all that. And then you've got that last sequence where Marty has to, hit 88 miles per hour when the lightning tower hits the clock, when the lightning bolt hits the clock tower. All that is all made up. The whole story is explained properly, and it's a really great last act of the film where all these things need to go right. But Doc Brown is, stuck up at his clock tower and he can't get the attachment going, and then Marty's coming down the road, and then it finally all happens, and it's really good. The points where I think Back to the Future 1 kind of fails, not so much fails, but the reason why it's not number 1 is probably because of a few things. One could be that I just think that in terms of after you've seen part 2, that's where it comes into it. Like the storyline in part 1's great, but I think as a replay value, part 2 definitely has heaps more replay value than part 1. But part 1 is a fantastic film. It's the replay value. It's also some of the time it can be, the story kind of slows down at times. Not too much, but not as much as part 3. But I'm putting a number 2 for that reason only, is because part 2 is the superior film, and we'll talk about that in a second. So part 1 for me does get a solid 8.5 out of 10 for me. Now for my favorite Back to the Future film. Well, yeah, I'm gonna say it, and already, it's definitely Back to the Future Part 2. Starting off straight away from the end of Part 1, well, you had that little snippet at the end of Part 1 where Doc Brown comes,
"You gotta come back with me." "Where?" "Back to the future. It's your kids, Marty. Something's gonna be happening about your kids."
and they go into the future in 2015. Now, as a kid, you see 2015 and you're like, whoa, hoverboards, flying cars, this is amazing, right? Well, that never happened. What do we get? We get, other weird things, those hoverboards, those things that people used to use. But anyway, moving on from that, Marty gets his hands on an almanac, which tells him, the sporting results from 1950 to 2000, which is very interesting as well. And Marty gets to see how Jennifer gets to see how the family kind of is in a way. We see glimpses into Marty's future. And again, even from part 1, about the whole thing, and in part 2 about how Marty broke his hand and how did that happen, the car accident, etc. We find out glimpses of that, and that's actually answered in part 3. So it's good how all 3 films kind of do talk to each other. Now from that, we've got how they go from the future, where they go back into the past, 1985, and everything's changed. Now what's good about that is that we find out that old Biff Tannen stole the time machine and changed the course of history to his liking, and he became kind of like a Donald Trump figure, which is obvious from the hotel that you see in the film as well. But then from there, they go back into 1955 to undo what Biff did and to change certain things around to stop him from getting the almanac. So this is where the film really succeeds, because we've got all these different timelines, all these different scenes happening, they all work well together, and we're even revisiting scenes from part 1, which as a kid I thought was awesome, because like, oh my god, that's from part 1 and he's there in the same scene and there's 2 people, there's 2 Martys there. It's really cool, and how they edited it as well. I just think part 2's got so much replay value, so many good one-liners. The storyline goes, in a great kind of, at a great pace, well edited. Some great music in this as well. Obviously part 1 I think had the superior soundtrack as well, but I just think part 2 is the superior Back to the Future film. And again, it's very controversial in this, guys. Everyone's got their own opinions, but for me part 2 deserves a 9.5 out of 10 for me. The most superior Back to the Future film, and it's something that you can chuck on and watch over and over and over, which I have done so many times. And of course, guys, let me know what you thought of my rankings of the Back to the Future films in the comments below. Leave a like if you liked the video, and of course, if you want to if you haven't subscribed already and you want to subscribe, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys on the next episode of DASKA Discusses.
To the future. Boom.